Here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. We are here. It is a Monday, and it is December already. How about that? Pretty hard to believe, but appreciate everybody hanging out with us here this morning. No off the bench. Reed Mouse, very important business to attend to with Trace Fowler, Casey McAllister. So no off the bench today. Believe the plan is that we will have off the bench at some point throughout the remainder of the week, but be on the lookout for that. But we still have a show here on Monday from 11 to noon, and we got a good show. Lots to talk about here on this edition of the Stone Shield Show. The Bengals are alive and well. How about that? Maybe not well, but they're alive. Here at this point, the Steelers, they lose again. They look horrible in the process. Buffalo, yeah, they won. Yeah, it was impressive they won without their tackles, but for the Cincinnati Bengals, are you scared of the Buffalo Bills going into this weekend? I don't think so. So we'll talk about that. We'll rehash some of what transpired on Thursday. Obviously, we did have the show on Friday last week, the day after Thanksgiving, kind of rehashing what was an awesome night for the Cincinnati Bengals. That podcast is out wherever you get your podcast, so check that out if you missed Friday's show. But we are going to talk some Cincinnati Bengals here. We'll kind of look at the grand scope, I guess, of the National Football League, specifically the AFC, and of course the AFC North as well. So looking forward to kind of breaking that down. But here we are again, right, with the Cincinnati Bengals. Seemingly each and every year they do this. We anticipated that they would win some games, but I think, you can actually start talking about perhaps running the table. As crazy as that sounds, I mean, if you take care of business against Buffalo, you really can start talking about it, because then you got Baltimore, who you just beat the crud out of them, and then you'll be favorites in the final 3 games. So it'll be interesting to see. But the Bengals kind of recapturing everybody's attention here, and certainly getting some help from the rest of the AFC and the AFC North specifically. Chuck Martin going to join the show in about 30 minutes. Coach Martin, of course, the head coach of the Miami Redhawks. They are going back to the MAC title game, which certainly is very exciting. That game will be Saturday in Detroit at noon, so make sure you get some tickets if you haven't done so already. I know the Miami faithful certainly will be out in full force for that one. I'm a proud Miami alum, so excited to have the opportunity to talk to Coach Martin here in about 30 minutes. Make sure you stick around for that and get your tickets if you want to go up, make the trip to Detroit. And if not, that's fine. You can watch on TV at noon. But won a couple of MAC titles since he has been here, 2019, 2023, a couple of years ago. And kind of an unorthodox year for the Redhawks. 28 seniors graduated last year, so you kind of knew coming into the year it was going to look a lot different. You were going to have a lot of youth all over the place. Slow start to the year. You drop your first 3 games, and then boom, you catch fire. And you go with a freshman here these past couple of games. He's certainly been a nice spark for them. And, they're going to compete for another MAC title, and looking forward to having Coach Martin on the show, asking him some questions about his team and their preparation for Saturday. And, what's interesting as well is Lane Kiffin, of course, left Ole Miss for LSU. So I'm going to talk about that, of course. We'll have a segment kind of dedicated to Lane Kiffin and my thoughts on that. Kind of weird, right? It's funny because Kiffin's legacy and just kind of everywhere he'd been, it was kind of messy, right? And he kind of, was kind of a bit of a snake, I guess you could say, a little shady, right? And then he kind of cleaned that up, really, the past 6 years here at Ole Miss, kind of getting back to old Lane Kiffin tendencies. I'm not going to kill him for leaving. If you want to leave, that's fine. But just kind of how the whole thing went down, just kind of, I don't know, reminded you a little bit of him leaving Tennessee, right? I assume when he comes back to Ole Miss as the head coach of LSU, regardless of, how much success they had over the course of the past 6 years at Ole Miss, he's not going to be welcomed back, right? And if he is going to be welcomed back, it's going to be by a course of booze, among other things. But I don't think the people of Oxford are particularly pleased whatsoever with how things went down. So we'll talk about that, and also going to ask Coach Martin about that a little bit there as well, because I look at this calendar, and it's simply broken. It's simply broken when you're talking about the calendar here for how college football operates, right? Obviously, NIL, transfer portal, we all understand these things, but for a team to essentially, be without their head coach right at the most important part of the year, obviously is not a great situation. It's not a great situation there at all. And hopefully that can get cleaned up in some capacity. And I'm certainly looking forward to asking Coach Martin about that as well, and getting his thoughts on that. Because, obviously he's not dealing with that directly here at Miami. But, it is something that certainly impacts college football, and something that we need to monitor and we need to discuss. So we'll ask Coach Martin about that there as well. We'll talk about that. Also, the game, we previewed it on Friday's show, but we got to break it down. Ohio State finally gets off the schneid. They finally reclaim that rivalry back against Michigan. Dominant performance, and we'll break down that on today's show as well. So make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Like the stream, all that good stuff. And podcast will be out later this afternoon, so make sure you check that out and hang around. In about 25 minutes, we'll talk to Miami head coach Chuck Martin. Let's start with the Cincinnati Bengals. Huge win on Thanksgiving night, as I mentioned. Going into Baltimore, Joe Burrow comes back. And was it perfect by any stretch of the imagination? No, and it didn't need to be perfect, right? But Joe Burrow came back, clearly gave this team some new juice, right? And, there's people out there that say, you might have won that game with Joe Flacco. I'm not very convinced you would have, to be completely honest with you, because, again, Burrow, he missed some stuff, which you don't usually see, right? That's what he's hung his hat on. He's a great player, but accuracy really at the top of that list. And, there were some rust elements, particularly in the first half, not on the same page with Jamar, which I don't know if we've ever really seen. But beyond that, he made some plays outside the pocket. He extended some plays. And you think about the touchdown to Hudson, right? I mean, the play kind of had broke down a little bit, and he rolled out to his right, gave Hudson an opportunity to make a catch, made a great catch, one-handed catch, but is Flacco really extending and getting outside the pocket and making a throw like that? I'm not quite sure he is able to do that, but I just thought it was unbelievable that Burrow was able to come back the way he did and just give his team newfound confidence and newfound life, really. And it looked like, we kind of speculated like, Joe Burrow's not going to magically fix the defense. He's not playing safety, right? And no, obviously it didn't, but I saw guys that were competing their butts off out there. And, you got a lot of pride. It's a primetime game, divisional opponent. You're probably going to play hard regardless. But it would have been very easy for this team to just kind of, season's kind of over, make business decisions here and just kind of go on our way, collect our paychecks, and move on. But that's not what Zach Taylor's team did. And I think the head coach deserves a lot of credit for that. Again, getting 9 back and provides some juice for you. And Jamar Chase, the word he used was urgency. And I think that's a great word where it's like, is it going to change much? From a preparation standpoint, probably not. But when he's out there and you saw that he had that serious injury, he had surgery, and he gets back a month earlier than people expected, everyone's like, if he's going out there and, giving it his all and risking his body and going out this early, everybody needs to be locked in and try to execute. And I think you saw that from that team. And then you kind of just break things down. You're watching football this weekend. You're looking at the AFC, and you're going, my goodness, you're doing a couple of things, one of which you're kicking yourself if you're the Bengals, right? Literally Jets or Bears, just one more win. One more win. If you hold on against the New York Jets, you hold on against the Chicago Bears, you feel like you're in a good spot. If you're the Bengals. Obviously, that is not the case, so you're kicking yourself a little bit about that, but there's also some optimism. Obviously, the players and the coaches need to take it 1 week at a time, but we've seen Buffalo the past few weeks. I understand they blew out Pittsburgh yesterday, 26-7, on the road without their tackles. That's impressive, but when I watch Buffalo, that's not Buffalo of last year. That's not Buffalo of 2023, right? That's a team that's significantly worse than they were the past couple of years, and if you play like you did on Thursday and execute a little bit better in the red zone, I think you can go in there and easily have an opportunity to win that game. I believe the line last I looked was 6.5. That seems like a lot, to be honest with you. I get it. The defense, are you convinced that they're going to be able to build off that or play to that level the rest of the year? Probably not. I understand that, how bad it was at the beginning of the year. But you're looking around the AFC and you're going, okay, you beat Buffalo. You just beat Baltimore. Obviously, it's difficult to beat them twice. But if you beat them, then you're really talking playoffs if you win these next 2 games, because you're going to be favorites in the last 3, right, against Cleveland, Arizona, and Miami, obviously in different order. But I think that can bring some optimism to a locker room and optimism to a fan base and certainly the coaching staff there as well. And you kind of just look at the rest of the AFC, right? I mean, we talk about each and every year, it's always, the Ravens and the Bills and the Chiefs kind of at the top. Not the case this year. Denver, they only have a couple of losses. Credit to them. They kind of had to gut it out last night against Washington, right? Washington showed a lot of guts in that game. But Denver was able to, hang in there and ultimately make enough plays at the end of the game to win. But are you scared of the Denver Broncos? Like, that team very well could be the 1 seed in the AFC. Yeah, they got a good defense. Yeah, they've won a lot of games for a reason. But if you're the Cincinnati Bengals with Joe Burrow, do you think that you don't have a chance against the Denver Broncos? Absolutely not. right? That's not, the Kansas City Chiefs that are 10-2, right? It's the Denver Broncos, and they got a quarterback that it's just a roller coaster ride with him, right? Just a complete roller coaster ride. At times it's like, oh yeah, he looks like a first round pick, looks like a franchise guy, and at other times it's like looks like a backup, right? And they do some questionable things. I think I watched Denver, and I love Sean Payton, by the way. I think he's tremendous, but I think he's so bent on trying to prove, whether it be the fan base or the rest of the NFL, that we got our guy. We got an elite quarterback here in Bo Nix, and he, continues to throw the football a lot when maybe they should be running the ball. I mean, I'm looking at R.J. Harvey, and he only ran for 35 yards last night. Give him the ball. What was it, 13 carries? I get the yards per carry there isn't great, but give him the football a little bit more, and I think that could give you some opportunities to, be a little bit more balanced and have a better attack if you're the Denver Broncos. But point being, I look at them, I'm not really concerned, right? The New England Patriots, who I've been saying is the best team in the NFL, I get they didn't play well when they came to Cincinnati a couple of weeks ago, but you were right there at the end of that game with Joe Flacco and no Jamar Chase, right? If you see them in the postseason with Joe Burrow, you worried about them? No, not really, right? The Chargers, they got issues. Herbert just broke his left hand, so he'll be fine. But, I mean, they've had some really bad moments this year. The Colts are clearly reeling. They got their quarterback playing with a fractured fibula, right? So there's two ways you could look at this. One, just be incredibly frustrated and ticked off that you didn't capitalize when you had your opportunities earlier in the year and just hang on literally one game. Or you could look at this and say, shoot, if you can run the table, win the rest of these games, you feel good going into the playoffs. Obviously, you would have a home game because the only avenue is to win the division. And that's like, I mean, what's to say you couldn't just run through the AFC? There's not a team in this conference that, scares you, to be honest. Regardless of how bad your defense has been this year. So that's going to be a narrative that we're going to address, obviously, throughout the week and next week. And, if you lose Sunday against Buffalo, that all goes out the window. But based on the performance that you put on the field on Thursday, I think there should be a lot of optimism that you're going to be able to piece together a couple of wins here down the stretch. And, obviously that is, the defense plays a huge factor in whether or not that will be attainable. And, I'm looking at this Bengals defense and how they played on Thursday. We've talked about this group. The defense has been bad for several years, and they're early. A couple of years ago, 23, it was like, they were hanging in there, but, they were very dependent and reliant on creating turnovers. And you kind of saw them the past couple of weeks. So it's like, they're getting better, but they're not creating any turnovers. And then, boom, it comes in bunches, and you get a bunch against Baltimore. Are you going to be able to count on getting 5 turnovers a game the rest of the way? Absolutely not. But against, Lamar Jackson, who obviously you've struggled immensely against in the past, he scores a ton of points when he plays the Cincinnati Bengals. You kind of slow him down. Tight ends, they still had a solid game. They went with Kohler right the first play of the game, I think, and that was a big chunk play for them. But for the most part, you kind of did a decent job on the tight ends, and you had guys that covered on the outside, and you made tackles, right? DJ Turner is kind of, we've seen him put really good games out there on tape, and you kind of question, like, okay, is this borderline fluky, or is this something that he's going to be able to continue to do throughout the course of a year? And I think a big sign that is possible and that he's capable of doing it is when opposing offenses don't go at him. And he really did not get challenged much. I understand Lamar Jackson really struggled in the game, but I believe they only went Turner's way 3 times. And that certainly is very significant if other teams are like, we're just going to kind of go the other way and not even go at him. That's the sign of having a great corner. Right now, it's not like he's Patrick Surtain out there or Derek Stingley and these guys that you don't even look at their side of the field. Remember Darrelle Revis when he was on the Jets? It's like teams just didn't even look over there, right? He was just Revis Island. They didn't want nothing to do with that. Not necessarily at that level here, but that shows you if he's only getting targeted 3 times against Baltimore, that shows you the respect that teams are starting to gain for DJ Turner. So if he can be a guy that can hold that side of the field down going forward, you're going to face some good receivers here. Obviously, over the course of the next few weeks, Buffalo doesn't really have that one. They're very reliant, on Josh Allen, of course, and then you just played Baltimore. But, Arizona, of course, with Marvin Harrison, he's starting to come into his own a little bit here. He's been better with Brissett. Obviously, the Dolphins, no Tyreek, but they do have Waddle. And, you look at those receivers that you're going to have to go against. It's not like you got to face some of the best receivers in the game, right? You're not facing Justin Jefferson with a competent quarterback or, Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? Not having to face these guys here at this point. Devontae Adams, right? Facing some good players, obviously, but if you can eliminate their top target with DJ Turner, that's going to set you up for a lot of success. And I think really defensively it will come down to the linebacker play. We've all beat up on the two rookies, Demetrius Knight, Barrett Carter, rightfully so. They've been asked to do a lot, but we all kind of knew that, especially with Demetrius Knight. You took him in the second round. You needed a linebacker. Jermaine Pratt left. And it was supposed to be the Demetrius Knight and Logan Wilson show, and Zach Taylor made the decision relatively early on in the year that, you know what, we're going to go with the two rookies, Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight. That was going to garner some growing pains. It was just natural. That's what was going to happen. And, they've struggled, certainly. But I think the past few games, they've taken steps in the right direction, specifically from a tackling perspective, right? Are they going to, take some bad angles and, be in the wrong place and not fit a gap properly? Unfortunately, that's going to happen, right, with two rookies. But one thing that can happen is when they are in the right position and they have the ability to get a guy on the ground, they can't whiff. And you saw that a lot with both those guys, specifically Barrett Carter. And I think the past few weeks that's gotten cleaned up. Al Golden, after the Patriots game, he said, you know what, that was our best tackling performance of the year. I agree. And I think they followed that up. I'm not going to say it was better against Baltimore, but I think they pretty much matched it in the Baltimore game, the next week, right? And I thought they did a really nice job there with that. So it'll be very interesting to see what kind of Cincinnati Bengals team comes out there in Buffalo on Sunday. You have the mini bye. I think that is very beneficial, right? Because they've kind of been through the ringer, losing all these games, kind of a negative mindset. Now all of a sudden you get a big-time win on Thanksgiving, national TV against a divisional opponent on the road. Then you got some time to sit back and say, you know what, let's clear our head here and let's kind of prepare for this final surge as we try to pull off a miracle run and get into the postseason. So I think playing on Thursday is very beneficial. The Bill game obviously got flexed out of the spot it was supposed to be in. Now it's just a 1 o'clock game on Sunday. I don't think, I don't have a problem with that. Whatever, go into Buffalo and try to get something done. I haven't looked at the weather for the game yet, but this is a Bengals team that has had a ton of success against the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, we all remember the playoff game in the snow, one of my favorite games to watch as a Bengals fan. The second year they went to the AFC title game, that was an unbelievable game. Not many people gave them a chance there in that game. And obviously, the DeMar Hamlin game as well. Obviously, that was a horrible accident, but the Bengals were getting ready to blow out the Buffalo Bills in that game. I was in the stadium that night. The energy was through the roof, and they were moving the ball right down the field. They were getting ready to hang 35 on those boys and absolutely blow them out. So the Bengals have had a ton of success against Buffalo. They have a lot of confidence against Buffalo, and I think they're going to go in Sunday with a lot of confidence there as well. And as I mentioned with the Bills, very Josh Allen reliant, kind of getting back to their old ways as it relates to that. The defense, they only gave up 7 to the Steelers, but the Steelers are completely dysfunctional. Here at this point, they were without their tackles, but still had the ability to run the football, which was really impressive that Buffalo was able to do that. But to me, I look at this game, and you might say I'm biased. That's fine, but this game should be closer to a pick'em than a touchdown spread. Not saying a pick'em exactly, but I don't understand why the number is what it's at. I don't even think that's recency bias either. Like I'm looking at this offense with Joe Burrow. What they did against Baltimore, I was like, they're going to build off that, right? He's not going to regress. He's going to get better or stay the same, right? So that's in place. And then, obviously the defense is hit or miss, but now all of a sudden that's 3 consecutive games that they've put on tape that that the defense has gone out there and played solid football for you. And that's what we talk about all the time here on this show, right? Do you need to be a top 10 defense? Do you need to be a top 12 defense? No, you don't. You're not built that way. That is not the structure of your roster that you put together. Can't be one of the worst, but I think if you're a top 20 defense, which I think over the course of the past 3 weeks, they 100% have been a top 20 defense, I think that's good enough, right? Again, you built this roster around Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. And your whole thing was we're going to throw the ball around a lot, and we're going to score a lot of points, and that's going to be enough to win games and win playoff games as well. I agreed with the philosophy. Lots of other people out there said, nope, you can't do that. You need defense, right? Defense wins championships. You need to spend at least a little bit of money on defense. You can't just have a bunch of rookies out there defensively. And, the critics have looked correct over the course of the past 2 years because you've scored a lot of points, right? And the defense has absolutely let you down, besides, of course, the past 3 weeks. But if it is a top 20 defense, if they play like they did the past 3 weeks, that's your formula. That's what you were built to do. And then you got to feel pretty good about going out there and actually doing it. So that obviously is going to be what keeps this run going or starts this run, I should say, or stops this run, is how good these guys can play on defense. But with Burrow back, unbelievable what this team is capable of doing on offense. And just, again, I talked about this on Friday, but I want to hit it home again. The people out there that said, you know what, sit down Joe Burrow, put him on the bench, we'll see him in 2026. Oh, he might get hurt. Don't put him out there. Just ridiculous. Just ridiculous. And, you know, if you're one of those people that said that, I think you should feel pretty embarrassed here at this point. I think you should feel pretty ashamed. I think you should feel pretty silly, honestly, at this point, because him going out there provided a whole new juice to this team. You look up and it's like, yeah, you still need to do the borderline impossible, run the table in order to get in. But would you rather be here or in a spot where you don't have Joe Burrow and you have one less win and you are just completely cooked? Why would you want to be in that spot? Oh, you might get a higher draft pick. Who cares? I'll worry about the draft in April. You can't be worried about the draft late November, early December. You can't be doing that. Absolutely can't be doing that. And it's the right decision for him to come back. I respect Joe for doing it. I'm not surprised at all. Nobody should be surprised at all. And again, you should be absolutely ashamed if you were one of those people that said, he might get hurt. It's football. It's tackle football. It's NFL football. Of course he might get hurt, right? He probably got dinged up in the game Thursday against Baltimore, along with all the other 22 guys total that were out there in this game. Everybody got banged up. Everybody on Baltimore got banged up. You think anybody came out of that game feeling 100%? No, it's the National Football League. It's a violent game. People get hurt. It stinks, right? You're going to hold your breath every time you watch Joe Burrow play, but it's just, that's football. That's what you sign up for, right? And when you're getting paid that much money and you're that good of a player and you can transcend the team that much just off the presence of one guy, why in the world would he not be out there? Why in the world would he not be out there? But some things happen, of course, around the rest of the AFC. We touched on, the Pittsburgh loss. When you look at the Steelers, man, they're in shambles. They're absolutely a complete mess here at this point. And, Rodgers, say what you want about Rodgers. I respect the heck out of him as a football player. And the fact that he's as old as he is, 40, 41 years old, he doesn't need to be playing right now. He doesn't need to play through injury. He understands how bad of a spot they're in as a team. And for him to go out there a week after fracturing his wrist, I know he missed the one game, but then just missed the one game, comes back after a fractured wrist, plays in a crappy weather game against a good team, just a violent game, bad weather, dings up his wrist more, lands on it, gets it hit, goes out for a second, comes back in, nose is all messed up too. He doesn't need to do that. He's a Hall of Famer. His legacy is pretty much set. There'll always be the people that say, he was, not the best guy to be around, right? And was a selfish player, perhaps, but his legacy's set. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a Super Bowl champion. He's a multiple-time MVP. He doesn't need to be doing this right now. And he went out there when his team was getting whooped and continued to play. I respect the heck out of Aaron Rodgers for doing that. I don't think you see, a ton of people in his position, if they were in that spot, go out there and do that. So I'll give him his flowers there, but just dysfunctional, just completely dysfunctional. In this league, you got to spend more money on offense and defense, I think. Now, it doesn't mean you need to spend as much money on offense as the Bengals do, right? Again, for the record, I think they did the right thing. We'll see over the course of the next few years if that proves true or not. But the Steelers, for multiple years in a row, have spent the most money on defense. And when you do that with a defensive-minded head coach and then you aren't good at defense, you're in a world of trouble. And that's kind of the spot, Pittsburgh finds themselves in right now. And you heard TJ Watt talking about this after the game where he's like, yeah, I don't know if I've ever been in an NFL game where the team that we're playing has ran the same play that many times. And they just kept running it over and over and over. And, with backup tackles, and the Pittsburgh Steelers couldn't stop it. They absolutely could not stop it. And they've got a lot of soul searching to do because they're a mess, right? They are a complete mess. I understand they've won several games and, they're 6-6. They're absolutely not out of this by any stretch. I think Rodgers, depending on his health, should be able to elevate them a little bit here down the stretch. But defensively, they're a mess. Offensively, when they lose Rodgers, if they lose him at some point again, they got to go with Rudolph. That ain't good, right? And even with a banged-up Rodgers, inclement weather, they can't run the ball, right? Rodgers at this stage of his career, he needs a run game. You got kind of just a collection of mid-wide receivers. Obviously, DK Metcalf has a lot of upside, but beyond that, who can you get the football to? So, you look at this division, and then you look at what Baltimore just did. And it's hard not to say that, Cincinnati, despite their defense, is like they're not much far behind the Ravens and the Steelers, to be honest with you, even just from a skill perspective when you evaluate their team, despite how bad they are on defense. So we talked about this at length, how this division was so accessible for such a long time this year, and you weren't able to capitalize, right? Obviously, you lose your quarterback, that happens. But, if Joe Burrow had played this whole year, the Bengals would be running away with the division here at this point, especially what's currently transpiring, of course, in Pittsburgh and Baltimore now there as well. Cleveland, of course, is a mess. They're out of it. They went with Shador again, and, that was one of our best bets of the weekend. Didn't obviously end up being successful. But, when I look at them, they're just a mess. They've got good players on that team, right? It's not like the Raiders literally only have 2 good players. And beyond that, they don't, besides Crosby and Bowers, they got nobody. And then, the Titans, they don't really have any good players. The Browns have good players, specifically on defense, but they can't execute. And they've got a coach calling the shots that's won a couple of coaches of the year. So I don't think necessarily it's him. Barry, the GM, I question, his thought process there at times and his ability as a GM. But obviously they're not a factor in the division here at this point. Will they ride with Shador? You might as well ride with him the rest of the way. I think you saw enough from Gabriel. Is Gabriel going to be a franchise guy? No. Could he potentially be serviceable if you had a lot of great players around him? Yes, but even people compare him to Tua, obviously, because he's left-handed and smaller, undersized guy, weaker arm. He's not on Tua's level, right? So I think what you kind of have in Gabriel. You might as well see what Shador can do. And I think just hearing Shador at the podium, it's a guy that just he seems frankly immature, right, when he's at the podium. And from a leadership perspective, I don't know if he's got, his life in order as it relates to that. So the Browns are a mess, and I don't see that changing anytime soon, to be completely honest with you. And for them, they've kind of been a mess for several years now. So you look at this division, you go, wow, this is the worst division in pro football, and I think it absolutely is. So hand up accountability. I was wrong. I had 3 teams making the playoffs in this division, and I think you could argue that they don't even deserve 1 team to make the playoffs, but obviously that's not how it works, and we'll see how things transpire over the course of the next few weeks. Have another opportunity against the Baltimore Ravens, right? Pittsburgh and Baltimore also plays as well, so they're going to beat up on each other a little bit. And you had a lot of life, or some life, after the Thursday game, but Pittsburgh losing again and losing the way they did, just not competitive whatsoever. I know they had a lead early, but Buffalo just kind of took them a little bit to fully get things going. And that certainly was very, very interesting to watch how that transpired. And obviously we're going to have a close eye on that going forward as we look at the Cincinnati Bengals and the remainder of their schedule here over the course of the next few weeks. But lots to be optimistic about from an offensive perspective. Again, Burrow, from a completion percentage standpoint, was he his normal self? No. Did he miss several times? Yes. We get that. We all understand that. But you think he's going to take a step in the wrong direction here against Buffalo? I don't see that happening. When you go back and look at some of these plays, man, they're just unbelievable, Joe Burrow type plays. Again, there were some plays where he was off, where he didn't look like Joe Burrow, where he missed, there was miscommunication, whatever. But, I've watched the touchdown to Yoshi so many times, and the way he changes protection at the line of scrimmage, understanding that, they're sending some pressure. We got to get out of this look and got to, alter this a little bit. And, they brought some pressure there off the edge. He had Pirine come in to protect. Sample was in there protecting there as well. Samaje Pirine is kind of the key, actually, to this play, as he jumps over in the face of Burrow and gets a chip on the guy coming off the edge and allows Burrow to kind of step up, and then that's just a perfect throw. Perfect ball location there from Joe Burrow. He said after the game he didn't spin it necessarily the way he wanted to there on that play, but I thought the ball location was absolutely tremendous from Joe Burrow. And that was like, oh, yep, Joe Burrow's back there. And you saw that emotion from him as well. And when you see Joe Burrow get fired up like that, I think that goes through the rest of the team, to be honest with you. And it gives that spark and it gives that juice. And even as a fan, you're watching it and you're like, yes, this team is back when something like that happens. So that was a huge play there as well. Perfect throw. Great job by Yoshi hauling it in. That really changed the game, right? Because you were in a spot where you were kicking a lot of field goals and you should have been killing them and you hadn't really created any separation from them yet. And then the 2 huge plays there on 3rd down Tanner Hudson, the one-handed grab, third down, and then Yoshi as well. They're kind of down that seam, was on third down there as well. And that obviously is a huge money down in the National Football League and football at any level. So looking forward to those guys kind of building off of that. They ran the football fine. I know there's people out there that are frustrated. Why didn't Zach Taylor run the ball more? I hear you, but you went into Baltimore and you kicked the doors down. Right, and you blew the brakes off the Baltimore Ravens. So I'm not going to sit here and criticize, oh, you didn't call the right play. You went in there against a team that was favored to beat you, and you beat the crud out of them. So I think Zach deserves a lot of credit for that. He deserves a lot of credit for keeping this team together. Did he reap the benefits of number 9 coming back? Absolutely. But to just barely hold them together long enough. And they were, hanging on for dear life, right? This was, trending in the direction of getting pretty ugly. But Zach was able to just barely keep them together. And look, this lasts a week, and it very well could, turn upside down on you. We all understand that, right? It definitely could get very bad here if you lose this game to Buffalo or aren't competitive in the game against Buffalo. And obviously that will be something that the team has to overcome, and then more people will come out and criticize Zach Taylor, and rightfully so. But for now, he's got this team together, he's got this team hungry, and he's got this team in a position where they feel like they can ultimately win the game in Buffalo and then go on a bit of a run and try to get in the playoffs. It's unfortunate that we find ourselves in this position basically each and every year, right? Bengals fans are getting the calculators out, doing the math, like, all right, what needs to happen for Cincinnati to get in? We were all doing this last year there as well, kind of the same record here at this point. It feels eerily similar. And, you're finally seeing them put some pieces together, and it's like, oh, they're kind of getting hot here. The defense is playing a little bit better, literally exactly the same as last year, right? The defense was so bad, and then, the offense was obviously balling. Then the offense kind of slowed a little bit, but then the defense was like, oh, we can hang in here and help you win games. Literally feels the exact same here. 9-8 obviously hasn't been good enough the past 2 years, and ultimately we will see if that changes this year for the Cincinnati Bengals. But plenty of reason to be optimistic about what this team could potentially do here at this point. All right, Chuck Martin joining us any minute now, live here at the show. Just got a message. Press conference went a little bit long, so he might be a couple of minutes late, so that is all good. We will stand by and wait for Coach Martin. Looking forward to having him on the show. Redhawks, they're playing in the MAC Championship again. Third straight year that they are going to the MAC Championship, and that's certainly very exciting. I am a proud Miami alum, so looking forward to having that conversation with Coach Martin. They won it in 2019, which was my freshman year at Miami, and they also won it again in 2023. They went last year, didn't win, but a huge opportunity, kind of a different year for the Redhawks. And, things are always crazy in the MAC, but to start out the way they did, very, very poorly. And Western Michigan actually started out this way as well, where they lose 3 games to start, and that's like, oh boy, what are you going to do? And I get it. As a MAC team, you schedule some tougher opponents early, so it can be a little bit more difficult to get some wins under your belt early in the year. But then, they came together as a group, did a tremendous job. They got a freshman playing quarterback right now, which obviously, is exciting, and there's upside there. There's some nerves that come with that there, obviously, as well. But he's been playing well over the course of the past 2 weeks, and now he's going to, play in the biggest game of his life as they go to Detroit and ultimately play Western Michigan. So we'll have Coach Martin, come on in a couple of minutes. Looking forward, obviously, to that conversation. After that, we will talk Lane Kiffin. I'm going to ask Coach Martin about this as well. I've got my thoughts on the whole saga. It's something that people that in college football have been following that story for such a long time, right? And it's like, oh, is he going to stay? Is he going to go? What's he going to do? And, ultimately he decides that he is going to be leaving for the LSU job. I'll just do a little brief teaser on that segment here for a second. I don't think that is the right call to go to LSU. Like, I respect it. He's allowed to do whatever he wants to do. Did it go down perfectly? No, but in this day and age of college football, it's not going to go down perfectly the way the calendar is set up, right? These schools are making decisions, and these schools are being able to recruit coaches during the year, right? I don't understand how that's possible, right? In the National Football League, right, you can't talk to a coach while they're still in season, right? Like the Giants right now, they can't talk to, a coordinator that they have interest in, right? If they wanted to, Lou Anarumo, they can't talk to him right now because that's not legal. You're not allowed to do that. Now, if they wanted to talk to a guy that's not in the NFL, that's perfectly fine. You're allowed to do that, but they wait until the year is over in order to have those conversations. Remember when Zach Taylor was hired? Everybody's hiring their coaches in that cycle, and the Bengals are kind of just sitting there, and everyone's like, oh, what the heck are they doing? Well, the Rams were playing in the Super Bowl. It was very obvious that they were going after Zach Taylor. He was their guy, but they waited till, the Super Bowl concluded, then ultimately they brought in Zach Taylor. There needs to be something in college football that can prevent this from happening, right? Because my whole thing is that you have these teams each and every year that are putting all their chips on the table to compete for the postseason, right? That's why they do this. All the work you put in, the summer workouts, the two-a-days, all the practices, right? Your non-conference schedule, your conference schedule. You're putting all this work in for an opportunity to play in the postseason. And now the postseason's going to get here and your coach is going to leave, right? That just doesn't make any sense to me as well. So, we'll break down that whole thing. Again, can't bang on him for leaving. It's a big job. It's LSU. It's clearly a bigger job. I think the Florida job's a better job. I'm very interested to figure out exactly what went wrong there. The Florida AD, obviously, Strickland has done some questionable things over the course of the past few years, and he probably let Napier go for a year too long. So that to me is like where you would have gone if you're Lane Kiffin, but he wanted the LSU job, and apparently it's been pretty evident for the past couple of weeks that it's just those two that were honestly competing there for Lane Kiffin's services next year. And the Buckeyes, of course, reclaimed victory against the Michigan Wolverines. 4 straight years, of course, Michigan was able to win that rivalry game, and then ultimately Ohio State able to respond in a big way and pick up a big-time win. All right. Looks like we have our guest here ready to go, and that is, of course, head coach of the Miami Redhawks. His name is Chuck Martin, and he is going to join us live right here on the show. Coach Martin, you got me? Can you hear me? I appreciate you making some time.
Yes, I can hear you good. Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you. Thanks so much for stopping by and joining us here for a few minutes.
How about this for a backdrop? That's a good backdrop, right?
Oh, yeah, that's perfect. That is absolutely gorgeous. I love it.
Too bad it's cold. I'm going inside.
That's all good. But I appreciate you, Coach, making some time here for us on the show. Crazy year, really, for the Miami Redhawks. And now you look down, and you're going to be headed back to the MAC Championship, obviously, for the 3rd consecutive year. I've had some success, obviously, in that game in the past. But kind of just contextualize this year for us a little bit because, it was a rough start. You drop your first 3 games. One game, the offense doesn't really do much. Then the defense doesn't really do much. But then everybody's just able to mesh and come together. You get hot during MAC play, and you're headed back to a game in which you've played at several times, obviously, in the MAC Championship. Just kind of contextualize this year for us and how your team was able to get to this point.
Yeah, no, again, when we lose both 3, 5, we lost everybody on our offense. We lost 4 back. We lost our top guys on offense. And then we had 6 back on defense. One of them's done for years. So we knew it was going to be a huge transition year, but we got back, and kids had a race, step up and play. And then we got some, we had 40 freshman transfers. And also, we don't start off good. The UNLV game, that was the key week because we're 0-2. We lost to 2 Big Ten teams. We got a really good UNLV team who I think is 10-2 right now at our place. And they just beat UCLA, and we played our tails off that day. We actually played good football for the first time all year. We had 2 14-point leads. We blew them both. And then we had the ball inside their 20 with 2 minutes to go to kick a winning field goal, and we fumbled away. And I didn't know how our kids were going to react. I was worried that can this young group, inexperienced group, absorb this tough loss? And then we win 5 straight, and we're in good position. But then we have a gut-wrenching loss to OU. And then we lose the game to Toledo, and everybody left us for dead. We got to go to Buffalo, and kids rallied again. And now we're down to our 3rd quarterback, our 4th running back, our 5th linebacker. We've had so much attrition since January, and kids just keep playing it. Like the first 2 touchdown passes Saturday in the biggest game of the year, Thomas Gutowski to Braylon Isom. Thomas Gutowski didn't play till week 11, and Braylon Isom didn't really play till week 7, like a snap. And in the biggest game of the year, they catch – so the announcer's like, who are these guys? I don't know. A lot of kids have stepped up, and it's been an incredible journey. It's been a blast. It's a great group of kids, but my coaches have kept everybody together, and that's always the key. When you see a team that has resolve, the head coach gets a lot of credit, but it's really the assistants that don't fall apart, and they stick together, and our defense has kept us in this thing all year, and somehow you look up and we're in a 3-way tie, and we beat Western and no one else beat Western, and that was the common denominator. We get to go to the MAC championship game. We couldn't be any more thrilled.
Absolutely. And, we all love Maction because kind of the parity of the conference each and every year, right? You got these games in the middle of the week and it always feels like, either team can win. I think that's what kind of draws people in so much. And, the conference is always good. There's always good football in the conference. But I'm watching this year and I'm like, dang, like these teams are really good. What's kind of your state on just the, conference as a whole, the MAC as a whole? Because I look at this team, this conference top to bottom, and there's just some really good teams.
Yeah, and again, the tough thing is we all lose good players every year, so
yeah,
you always have to replace some top-end guys that are getting poached. But everybody's done a good job of replacing kids, and the bottom teams are getting better and better. And like I said before the year, I don't think there'll be an undefeated team. I was hoping I was wrong and we would be undefeated. But it turns out there's one team with one loss, and then there would, with 2 weeks left, there's 5 teams with 2 losses, and it's anybody's race. So a lot of parity, just like across. If you look at college football, there's not a lot of teams. The ACC has a 6-way tie for second place. So this is pretty common and this crazy when the rosters keep changing. Everybody's a little more inconsistent than they want to be because we're all playing new guys within our systems. But you just got to keep plugging away. But it's been crazy. It's been Maction at its finest this year. If you think we're here because we beat Western, but we're also here because Ball State beat OU. We're also here because Bowling Green beat Toledo. So anything can happen, because those are not likely outcomes. We just beat Ball State, and after a game, to think that we're going to the MAC championship game because Ball State beat OU is pretty mind-boggling.
You've had to play a lot of freshmen this year and probably guys that even going into the year that you didn't expect to play a ton. I believe it was 28 seniors that graduated last year, so obviously a very young group. What are some of the challenges with dealing with that much youth on your roster and guys that you need to step up in big moments?
Yeah, inconsistency in preparation, inconsistency, and just during a game, it's a lot of plays, and they get too high when things go well, and they got too low when things didn't go well, and that was kind of who we were early in the year, and we are still at times week 12. There's times on the sidelines we don't handle, we got to play the next play. We got to play the next moment. So everybody's going through that. We're going through that, but our kids have come a long way. Our coaches have done a great job working with our kids. If you look at our secondary, like UNLV, and we lost all our confidence in the second half. We didn't give ourselves a chance. They scored 31 points in the second half. It was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And there's a lot of people that thought that way, but just our coaches and our kids have just learned to, okay, next time I give up a play, I got to fight through it. I can't go in the tank. And again, sometimes you got to learn hard lessons, particularly in athletics. And our kids learned a lot of hard lessons through the year and have gotten stronger from it. And I'm really proud of them.
Specifically on Thomas, the quarterback, obviously he's got a couple of starts, under his belt now. He's gotten some playing time. What specifically went into that decision? And I'm watching him play, and I don't want to get carried away here, but obviously you've had great quarterback play with Brett Gabbert for a long time. And some of the plays he makes and some of the toughness he shows, that looks a little bit familiar. Maybe we've seen that at the quarterback position for Miami a little bit. What went into the decision ultimately to roll with him, and what do you like about what you've seen thus far?
Obviously, we had a quarterback change after Toledo, and Henry came in, and things didn't go. Or excuse me, going into Toledo, and Henry came in, and we didn't play very well. And it wasn't just Hank; he didn't play great that day, but we didn't block great, we didn't run great, we didn't do anything great against Toledo. We were terrible on offense, including me. I run the offense, so I'm not making excuses. It was a bad night for all of us. We kind of went the Buffalo game, plan on playing both of them, giving Thomas, taking some pressure off Hank, and give Thomas. Not the keys to the car, but so we're kind of going to play them both early and just kind of see how the game went. And obviously Thomas's second series let us down for a touchdown, and we kind of stuck with them, and things just kind of rolled from there. So there wasn't a master plan necessarily to just wholesale sub, because Hank's played some really good football for us and done a good job for us. But obviously during the Buffalo game, we just rolled the hot hand, and then obviously after that game, you got to start him against Ball State, and he played well again. So it's just kind of the way things played out. It wasn't. I didn't want to put the weight on the world of Thomas and, say you're the starter at Buffalo, and I wasn't giving up on Hank because I still know Hank can play really good football for us.
Western Michigan, kind of some similarities with them and you guys. They struggled early in the year. They dropped their first 3 games there as well. They've gotten really hot here of late, and obviously haven't dropped the game since you guys beat them at the end of October. Special teams played a big factor in that first game, and obviously they're going to want to run the football with Lowry, their quarterback, there as well. What are some of the challenges specifically that they're going to bring to the table on Saturday?
Yeah, I say they're similar to us in the fact that the different schemes, but they're really good on defense. In 6 of the 8 conference game, they've given up under 300 yards, which is pretty amazing. to hold your opponent under 300 yards, hard to do. 6 of the 8 games, they held Ball State to 88 yards in one game. So they are really, really good on defense. Offensively, like you said, they got Brock Lowry. They got the tailback who was freshman of the year in the league 2 years ago, is a really good player. They got some really good receivers. So they're going to run the ball and take their shots down the field. So similar style to us, a run the ball, play defense team just like Miami. So different schemes, but same philosophy.
Miami head coach Chuck Martin joining us here live on the show for a couple of more minutes. Playing an opponent for a second time, right? Obviously in the NFL they deal with that all the time. Doesn't always happen in college, but certainly has happened in the past, and that's something you've had to deal with there as well. Here at this point of the year, early December, like, you are who you are. You're not going to change the identity that you have as a team. But what are some of the changes that you would make, or is it pretty much you're going to run out there and it's going to be a very similar style to the game that we saw at the end of October?
Yeah, I think both teams, it's hard to go wholesale changes week 13 for
right.
one, but obviously we're 2 quarterbacks removed from the last time we played Western Michigan, so we're a little different. We're a little different team than we were, but we haven't changed our offense much. We're still playing the same style of offense. So, but I think your point is it's week 13. There's a reason they got here. There's a reason we got here. We're going to do what we do good. Certainly, you'll look at that first film and try to figure out any things that you might want to do a little bit differently. That you did this and you didn't have success, so you maybe stay away from that. I'm sure they're doing the same, but they're really good on defense. They're really good on offense. They're not going to change their identity. We're not going to change ours.
And, Coach, kind of going away and just talking about college football in general here for this question. Obviously, Lane Kiffin right now is the story of college football. And, I'm looking at how the whole situation played out, right? I understand his players, of course, would want him to stay and be the coach. And I totally get if you're Ole Miss that, if he wants to leave, he probably shouldn't be hanging around. But my biggest takeaway is that clearly this calendar, it seems like it's broken, right? Because you go all off season. You got your summer workouts, and the goal in mind is to be playing in the postseason. Then for another team to come in and take your coach right before that moment, it just doesn't feel right to me. What's your take on that whole situation?
We're close. We're close. The recruiting schedule's way better. We got the signing dates this Wednesday for high school. The portal window, I know the college football playoffs still be going. There's nothing perfect, but you get through most of the bowl season and a lot of the college football playoff before the portal opens in January. Okay, so that's good. Now, what if they did this? And no one ever listens to me. No one ever even asks me, so why would they listen? What if we had a coaches portal in January too? Ooh. That you couldn't hire or fire a coach until January. So these kids talk, these kids aren't very loyal, and they did whatever. These coaches, what coaches are? I mean, I'm the only loyal guy in America. I'm in 12th year at Miami. Like, the guy's got an undefeated team, and that is the problem. Like, let's make the coaches portal in January too. You can't fire a guy during the year. You can't fire James Franklin week 4 because you have some pissed off alums that are running the show. Yeah, and he's one of the best coaches and proven best coach. And I don't know James Franklin. I'm not friends with James Franklin. I'm not pro or con James Franklin. But firing him weeks, that's where this starts. It starts with the schools. Mm-hmm. The schools make these decisions, and schools no, you can't. You coach for the whole year. Then after the year, we can fire you, and after the year, we can hire a new coach, and have that portal mirror up with the player portal, and then you wouldn't have to deal with this. But again, like I said, that's me and you talking. No one's really asking us. So.
All right, final question for you, Coach. I know your arm's probably getting tired. I'm asking you to hold that up for so long, but
I'm going to switch it. It's been a good workout.
You've won this game a few times, obviously, but this year, kind of the unorthodox year that it has been, what would it mean to you to bring this back to Oxford another time here in 2025?
It's amazing to get this point. It's hard to get this point. 19 we did and won it. 23 we did and won it. 23 we had a really veteran team. 19 we had a veteran team. 24 we had an even more veteran team. We didn't win it. We didn't play very good, and OU played good, beat us. Now I got this team I've got 5 guys, your back-to-back years. This is old hat for you. I got 5 players that played in this game last year. How about that? That's mine.
Crazy.
5 players. There's not one offensive player that's going to step on the field that played in the game a year ago. And there's only 5 defensive guys. Yeah. We're going to play 50-some guys or 45 guys, and 5 of them played. And again, we're 1 year removed. So you think, oh, well, you got an advantage over Western. This is old hat. I go, no, Western's only 5 guys behind us. Trust me. This is pretty amazing that this group got us here. And if we could win it, it would be even more amazing.
No doubt about it. Coach, I appreciate you making some time from one Red Hawk to another. Thank you very much for joining the show, taking some time, obviously, on a busy week. Best of luck to you and your team on Saturday. Obviously, everybody out there, make sure you make the trip up to Michigan if you are able to do so. Get some tickets and get the Red Hawk faithful out there in full force. But, Coach, I appreciate you. Good luck, and we'd love to do it again sometime soon.
Awesome. Anytime, let me know. Appreciate it, man.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach. Chuck Martin, head coach of the Miami Redhawks, joining us live here on the show. We appreciate him. Obviously, it's a busy week. He's getting ready for MAC title game as Miami is going to travel up to Michigan to play Western Michigan. They played Western Michigan already this year, able to get a big-time victory there in that game. And look to do the same here again. And third year in a row that Chuck and his team have been playing in this game, and certainly wish them the best of luck. That'll be on at noon on Saturday, so if you can't make the trip to Detroit, that's all right. Flip your TV on, cheer on the Miami Redhawks here. And I know I certainly will be doing that. But they are selling tickets there, of course, and trying to get the Redhawk faithful out there in full force. So get some tickets, go up to Detroit if you can, and cheer on Miami as, unbelievable job. He's been there. He talked about, how long he's been with the team. He's been incredibly loyal to the city of Oxford, the university as a whole. He's done a tremendous job. All he has done is just win and develop guys. No nonsense, doesn't complain, just continues to put the work in, and you kind of see that in some of the success that they've been able to have. So appreciate Coach Martin stopping by here on the show and doing a tremendous job, giving us some time, obviously, on a busy week. All right, Lane Kiffin asked Coach Martin about this and did want to talk about it a little bit on the show. Obviously, everybody around the country right now is talking about it. And, my biggest issue with it is the calendar. And Coach Martin alluded to this. Yeah, it's gotten a little bit better, but it's not by any means perfect here at this point. And clearly, right, you put all this work in, the summer workouts, the two-a-days, the off-season training, the whole regular season, non-conference play, conference play, all of this work gets put in so you can go out there and have an opportunity to compete in the postseason. And you have this historical year at Ole Miss, and then LSU can just come in and poach your guy. Obviously, it's a two-way street. Lane Kiffin wants to have the interest of going and playing in a game like that. We all understand that. Or, going to leave and playing or coaching a team in LSU, that's obviously his decision. But to be able to do that in college football, to me, just doesn't make any sense, right? In the NFL. Right? If you have an interest in a coordinator, you have to wait to a certain point before you can talk to him. You can't just reach out in the middle of the season and be like, hey, we want you to be our next head coach. It doesn't work like that. I don't think it should work like that in college either. And, there's people out there. Kirk Herbstreit was basically saying that they should entertain the idea of letting him coach, and then people attacked Herbie for saying that. I don't think he should have been attacked for saying that. I totally get what he's saying, but I also get that as an administration and athletic department, you're probably not going to let that fly. But there is a tough situation to be in, right? If you're Ole Miss making the decisions, I don't think they necessarily made the wrong decision, not allowing him to stick around and coach throughout the playoffs, right? Because if you have a guy that he's leaving, you're just going to let him hang around for a couple of months where he doesn't even want to be a part of what you're doing going forward. Just give you an opportunity to recruit some of your guys to his new school and recruit some of the staff to that school there as well. Probably not a good situation, but also you have to look at it through the lens of this is the best year Ole Miss has had in a really long time. And if Lane Kiffin is their coach, they have an opportunity to win a national title. Now, they're still going to get into the field. They're still going to be in the college football playoffs, but I'll just go out there and say it. There is a 0% chance that they win the national title without Lane Kiffin, right? And I get there's frustration, and I get that, he's leaving, wouldn't want him to come back and, coach this team. Well, you had a chance to win a national title, and I get technically you still do because you're in the playoffs, you're in the dance, whatever. That's fine. You're not winning without Lane Kiffin. You could potentially win with him, and then you just got to kind of play that game. Obviously, the athletic department, the athletic director, the chancellor, they said, yep, no, that's not going to fly. I respect their decision. I think, if I had to make that decision, that's probably the decision that I would make there as well. Don't think it's crazy to suggest that they should have pondered, letting him stick around and, finish this season off. Obviously, that's what the players wanted. That's what Coach Kiffin wanted to do there as well. But he's going to leave. He's the next coach at LSU. And, it's funny because, Lane Kiffin is a very polarizing figure. He's very entertaining, right? Has been for a long time, his whole career, right? Tennessee and USC, and then he was at Bama, and he was at FAU and Ole Miss. He was coach of the Raiders, obviously, before that. So he's been around the block, comes from a coaching family, obviously, and seemingly controversy has followed him wherever he has been at. When you look at, remember when he left Alabama, Coach Kiffin, Coach Saban, said, you got to get out of here, right? We don't want you hanging around anymore, and then he left ultimately before the playoff game. And, that wasn't exactly the best departure, right? And he goes on to coach FAU. Obviously, when he leaves Tennessee, now everybody in Knoxville hates him. They had a solid year the 1 year he was there, and he says, you know what, I'm leaving. I'm going to SC. So, he had kind of cleaned up his reputation a little bit here in Oxford over the course of the past 6 years, but it kind of all came crashing down yesterday. And, again, I don't have an issue with him saying that, hey, I want to coach this team. I would have done that too if I was him, but there was probably no chance that was going to be something that could happen for Lane Kiffin. Now, the question for me is why go to LSU, right? Now, I get it. It's a proud team. People would proud football program. A lot of people would say that it's one of the best jobs in America. From a recruiting standpoint, you are the biggest show in town, right? You don't have to compete with really anybody else in the state of Louisiana. That obviously is something that would draw a guy into that. But, I look at the Florida job, and, obviously Spurrier, he's looked up to Spurrier for a long time. They just won a title in basketball, but that's a football town. That's a football, campus, and they want to, be brought back to relevance. And I just think it's a, more stable situation there. And personally, I think it's a better brand. As crazy as that sounds, people would say, oh, you're crazy for that. I think it is too. I would have went to Florida if I was going to leave, but now he goes to LSU, where things are a complete mess right now with LSU. They got the lawsuit, obviously. They got the governor all in the business of, what they're doing as a football team. That doesn't make any sense. And he's an outsider. Right? Why did Coach O fit so well down there for that little stint where they were able to win a title with Joe Burrow? Because he was one of them. The people of Louisiana thought, hey, he was one of us, right? And Brian Kelly, he was an outsider, and he's coming down doing his fake Louisiana accent, whatever, just completely cringy. Kiffin ain't from Baton Rouge either, right? So he's very much an outsider here as well. And if things get, a little bit choppy early on, people are going to turn on Lane Kiffin similarly to how they did on Brian Kelly. And, I just feel like he has spent 6 years building up Ole Miss, and this stage of the portal and NIL was in a spot where he could, he brought them to national relevance, and I think he could win national titles there. And now all of a sudden he's restarting to do it at LSU, a spot that's been dysfunctional ever since Joe Burrow won the national title, and where there's a lot of turmoil with the governor, right, and the lawsuit and Brian Kelly, and it's all just kind of hanging over. And then again, he's an outsider there as well. He's got a lot of work to do in LSU, and the expectation is through the roof there at LSU. At Ole Miss, he could have stayed there, won 8, 9, 10 games a year, and that would have been good enough. They probably would have built a statue for him. Well, now he better deliver with the national title at LSU, or it's going to be, a huge issue for him. And I just didn't get that spot. I get the lure of LSU, but they're kind of a mess right now. They've got a lot of work that needs to be done. It's going to take some time. The expectations are going to be through the roof. And I don't know. The last time, when he was in the NFL, that was a mess. The SC era, that didn't work out. I think he had kind of found his niche there at Ole Miss and was in a good spot. Now he's going to redo things, so you're going to try to build up LSU. And I don't know. I don't anticipate this working, to be honest with you. I don't think he'll be there for longer than 5 years. I think ultimately he will be out. They're going to lose some games. It's going to get ugly. He's going to get into it with some members of the media, and I don't think ultimately it's going to be pretty. But we'll see. He's a polarizing figure, and obviously we're all going to follow that story very, very closely. I want to talk about the Buckeyes here before we get out of here. And, got a lot of respect for what they were able to accomplish on Saturday and how they were able to accomplish it. Obviously they had lost 4 straight years. Ryan Day had the 1 win against Michigan early on, but since then it was a whole lot of losing. And, they were the better team. They've been the better team over the course of the past 4 years. They've always had the better roster, and ultimately they've still come up short, right? And ultimately have gotten outplayed. But I really think they did kind of adjust the game plan mid-game. I think they were going out there to sling the football around, and you know what? Because remember Ryan Day used the phrase like we're chasing efficiency, right? I think the plan was for them to go out there and absolutely cut it loose in this game. And they did on the first play, weren't able to connect. Then, boom, the second play, they throw the pick, and then they kind of were on their heels, right? And Ryan Day in this game, for whatever reason, has found his way on his heels a lot. And Michigan had a golden opportunity to really apply some pressure. And if they would have went, boom, 10-0 to start, Ohio State would have had that, oh, here we go again moment, but they weren't able to get in the end zone. It was 6-0, and that kind of felt like their chance, Michigan's chance to really make something happen in this game, and then ultimately that didn't end up transpiring. And, they weren't as aggressive. I thought Sam was unbelievable in the game. I don't feel like he's getting enough credit for how he played. I would have liked to see him do a little bit more, but he wasn't asked to do more. And we'll get to that in a second. But he had the miss, obviously, on the pick, and then he had the miss to Jeremiah Smith on the goal line on the fade. But other than that, he was nails throughout the game. So, first time playing Michigan. He's on the road. He's always heard about is how they've lost and all this. And then he's supposed to be the guy to come in here and help them win. I'm sure it was, an intense moment for him, and obviously he was feeling some pressure and some uneasiness there. I think he showed that early on, and then he bounced back and was tremendous. I mean, the fourth down the sideline to Smith, dime. The deep ball to Carnell Tate, dime. And he was very accurate with the football throughout the rest of the game. He made good decisions. He protected the football, which is what he's done all year. But that's besides, obviously, that early throw there that was picked off. But I thought he was tremendous in the game. I think Ohio State really had an opportunity to run things up on Michigan in the second half, and for whatever reason, they opted not to. And Ryan Day, the knock on him is every time he finds himself in this game, he is so bent on trying to be the more physical team and run the football, right? Because seemingly whoever has the most rushing yards always wins this game, and he's gotten so sucked into that. And that's how he decided to play the second half. But this year they had the advantage on the line of scrimmage. That Ohio State offensive line is awesome, right? Bo Jackson, a freshman, he's been good all year for him, but that was his huge moment there with his performance in the game. A couple of really nice, incredible runs, and they had that drive. That was like 11, 12 minutes. That's almost a full quarter there in the second half where they had the ball and they were just punching Michigan in the mouth. And I think they got some satisfaction out of that. Me personally, I think it would have been more satisfying to throw it around and score a bunch of points, which I think they could have done. But they said, you know what? No, we're running the football here. We're proving a point. We're punching them in the mouth. We're bleeding the clock, and we're just slowly going to suffocate them in this game. And that's, exactly what they did. They had it for 11, 12 minutes, only kicked a field goal there on that drive, but, ultimately it was enough to win the game. I thought from a Michigan perspective, that was about as bad as you could have done. And they might be in trouble here with Sharon Moore because the win against Ohio State last year and, obviously the year before, kind of masked, I think, some of the issues that they have. I mean, his plan was horrible, right? And I think he kind of sucked the fan base and the athletic department into thinking that he was the guy. Well, if you go into next year and you win 7-8 games, you're going to have some issues there if you're going to be sticking around as the head coach. I thought his plan was horrible, right? You have this quarterback that you're paying literal millions of dollars, and you don't put him in a position to succeed at all. You just want to run the ball. You don't even run it with him, really. You just kind of hand the ball off, and the next thing you know, you're down, despite the fact you could have easily been up 10-0, and then you're on your back foot, and you're going to try to get into a drop back passing game, which is just not a good recipe. And you literally watched that game. He had one good throw. Like, he had one good play the whole game. It was like a little seam to the tight end. It was literally the only thing he did all game. So, like, if you're Sharon Moore, you got to give him some easy completions. You got to set him up. You got to get him using his legs. You got to do something. And they didn't help him out at all. And then what's even more embarrassing than that was he waved the white flag. Right? There was, 6 minutes left, and they were down 3 scores, and he punted the football. That's quitting, right? He quit. And to quit at home against that team, I don't understand that whatsoever. So, if you're Michigan, that's really got to rub you the wrong way because he had an opportunity there to at least show some fight. And he said, we're going to wave the white flag here with 6 minutes left and punt down 3 scores, which is just absolutely pathetic. So, didn't understand their plan. Didn't understand, the confidence that Michigan had showed in Sharon Moore. Congrats, he beat him last year, but he seems pretty average to me, and they might have some real questions there in Ann Arbor about what they're going to do at that position. Ryan Day, credit to him. I thought the way that Ohio State handled the game was very admirable. He said they were going to win with humility, and the clip is great where, Michigan, they show up after the game acting like they want to fight on the logo. Well, you had 60 minutes to show some fight, and you didn't. Right, so now you want to show up and try to fight at the logo after the game, but it was great. Ohio State didn't even entertain. I think maybe 1 or 2 guys had a flag and they were messing around a little bit, but for the most part, everybody was just kind of in the crowd celebrating with their fans. And I thought Ohio State really handled things in a very professional manner. Right. Ohio State is the much better run operation. They're the much better football program. They've got the much better head coach. And, probably after all those years of frustration, it would have been probably easy for them to sit there and, do something they regretted after the game, say something they regretted after the game, throw a punch, or just do something that was uncalled for after the game. That probably would have been easy, right? Because of all the frustration years past. They took the high road. I respect the heck out of that. I commend them for that. And now ultimately they're going to play Saturday night against Indiana. And I think that opened at 5.5, might be 6.5 now. I think we're about to see that, Indiana's a really good football team. They deserve a lot of credit. Mendoza's been good. Cignetti, outstanding. Great defense, good in the trenches. But that ain't going to be close on Saturday night. I don't think it's going to be close on Saturday night. We'll see if, Ryan Day's going to chase efficiency or whatever. But you cut it loose with saying indoors, right, in Indy with those guys. And they looked healthy, by the way, Tate and Smith. I think it could get ugly on Saturday night. I think Ohio State could, ultimately blow them out, which, again, I think is what the rest of the country should be hoping for, right? Because you don't want to tick off Ohio State in the playoff again. We had that last year. That wasn't good for everybody else, right? I think the best chance to get Ohio State is, have them cruise. They get the Big Ten title, and they're going into this thing with all the confidence in the world. And then, boom, if somebody can just stick around, apply some pressure in the fourth quarter, they could potentially knock them off. So I expect them to handle business against Indiana, but really impressive what they were able to do against Michigan. Had an opportunity to run it up and throw it around, and they said, we're going to run the ball, punch them in the mouth, bleed clock, and get out of here with a win. And respect the way that they played the game and respect the way that they ultimately handled the game afterwards there as well. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the show. Appreciate everybody hanging out as always. Had some good viewership here on the program today. And, had Chuck Martin. He stopped by. That certainly was exciting. We'll have that interview out. There was looked like some technical difficulties there at the beginning, so we'll see if we can work any magic there on that. But we appreciate Coach Martin stopping by on the show. Our Bengals segment, that will be out there as well. And, I got a full week of programming here at the show. Looking forward to that, I believe. Reed will be back tomorrow for Off the Bench. Stay tuned for updates on that. And, appreciate everyone, as always, for hanging out. Make sure you check out some of the merch that is on our website here as we, let's see. Yes, chatterboxsports.com/store. Chatterbox Bengals, Chatterbox Reds, Chatterbox Bearcats. Get 2 shirts for $40. Use code DOUBLE. And that sale runs through December 10th. So you got about a week and a half in order to get that done. And kind of a Black Friday special here. Great Christmas present. Obviously, lots of people need to do their Christmas shopping right now. You got a couple more weeks before Christmas. But great gift. If it's a Bengals fan, a Reds fan, a Bearcats fan, it's a fan of what we got going on here at Chatterbox, go get those shirts. They're really good quality there as well. They last a long time. So go up there and use that code DOUBLE so you get 2. So the Bengals one, for instance, you got a black shirt and an orange shirt. If you want them both, great. $40. Use code DOUBLE. Chatterboxsports.com/store. Not just Bengals, Reds, and Bearcats stuff up there as well. Appreciate everyone, as always, for tuning in. Appreciate the viewership here today, and we will catch you tomorrow. But until then, take care, everybody.